Quiet on set. Picture is up. All right, roll sound.
Rolling.
Roll cameras.
Cams rolling.
And 3, 2.
Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome to Hank's Think Tank. Guess what? Mark Hogan finally made it.
Finally
made it. That old shitty car of his didn't break down this time and he was able to get in.
Yeah, that old jalopy.
What is it again?
It's a 2013 Dodge Challenger, 5.7 Hemi, redline package.
That's a nice car, man. Yeah, I rode in it once. It was pretty cool.
And you'll never drive it.
Yeah, I know that. But it purrs like a kitten and all that. All right, guys, so here's what we got. And this one was one that we pulled, I'm telling you right now. We dug deep to get this one. This is going to be a great show. I'm excited about it. And the reason why is because it includes one of my favorite pastimes and something that Mark can't even go one day without, and that's drinking. So we got Joseph Breda from Old Humble Distilling Company out of Humble, Texas. So he's a neighbor of ours. And this is a place you guys need to go. He has live music, and you're going to hear all about it. We do a whole lot of stuff there. And I'm just really happy to have him aboard. But before we get started, I also wanted to mention that June 1st started hurricane season. And so we've decided to host, Mark and I, in conjunction with the Porter Fire Department, we're going to host a hurricane preparedness class. And this is going to be at the Porter Fire Department on Loop 494 on June the 28th at 6:30 p.m.
Mark your calendars and come on out.
Mark your calendars, come on out. And this is something that you're going to have to reserve a spot for because they can only do like 35 people at once. If we have to have another class, we'll book another one. But if you guys want to get on in this first one, that's June 28th at 6:30, give me a call here at Studio 13 and we'll get you set up. And we look forward to having you. Take care of your families and take care of your homes and stuff and prepare for a hurricane season. You never know when one's coming.
Amen, man.
Joe, how's it going, man? Good to have you aboard.
It's going fantastically. It's good to be here.
Let's talk about whiskey.
Let's do that.
I like whiskey.
It's one of my 3 favorite things to talk about.
One of your 3 favorite. What are your other 2?
Oh, that's a secret.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we'll get them out later.
You might drag it out of me later.
Once the drinking starts, we'll find out.
Truth comes with whiskey. That's true.
There you go. So where exactly is Old Humble Distilling?
Old Humble Distilling Company is in, just outside of Humble. We used to be in Humble proper, but there's a significant population of pearl-clutching biddies that basically ran us out of town.
Oh,
so
really?
we're just on the outskirts of town, just like a proper sin merchant.
Okay.
Tucked away in the woods, in between Tour 18 and Atascocita.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, just a little bit. If you're familiar with the area,
right.
It's just a little bit past Bellow Woods, but not quite Atascocita Timber Forest.
Cool.
Where Atascocita proper starts.
And how big of a place is it?
Our facility, our part of the facility is 3,500 square feet. Our operating floor, where we have our stills, is plotted out at 2,500 square feet. The other 1,000 square feet is going to be our tasting room and office and bar and bathroom and all those places.
Wow, that's awesome.
Well, when did all this come about? What gave you the idea to say, hell with this, I'm going to do whiskey from now on?
Right.
Well, I was a home brewer in college, so I was the most popular guy in my dorms because I had beer all the time that you didn't have to buy because we made it, because it was illegal to buy beer when you were 19. But water and hops and grains were not.
You were a popular dude, I'm sure.
So we made beer. Me and a buddy of mine who went to Stephen F. up in Nacogdoches, we both got into beer making about the same time. We had a dream of starting a brew pub in the 90s, but if you're familiar with any of the brew pubs that started in the 90s, you know that they're not around anymore.
Right.
The math was not on our side back then. The laws weren't on our side. The math wasn't on our side. It's really hard to do it. So obviously that never came to fruition. But after college, we went from making beer to making wine, or I went to making wine. He kept making beer. And then I went from wine making to wine tastings, and a wine tasting turned into a whiskey tasting. I was invited to one of those. And by now I'm late 20s, early 30s, and I still did not develop a taste for whiskey. I was not a big fan at the time. But I go to this whiskey tasting because, why not? Adventure, right? Go to this thing, and for the first time ever, I was sitting in front of 5 different expressions of bourbon that tasted different because they came from different places. Mm-hmm. They weren't all just Kentucky whiskeys. within 60 miles of each other, using the same water and the same climate, and the same barrels and the same grains, and tasting basically the same. There was Colorado and New York and Wisconsin and Texas and Kentucky, and it was magical. My eyes had opened for the first time. Like, whiskey, you can make whiskey that tastes good, not just the industrial swill that you typically get out of Lexington.
Right.
And that's when the seed was planted that I wanted to do this when I grew up. And a few years after that, I'm finishing up my MBA. My buddy gives me a call. He's like, the laws are about to change in Texas. We may be able to do this thing that we talked about back in the 90s, but with whiskey. I was like, oh, really now? A few months after that, we had a business plan. And a few months after that, we had a couple of stills on a boat heading over to Houston.
Wow.
And it started moving really fast at that point. Between 2010 and 2012, everything started going really fast. And then 2013, we had a properly incorporated. At the end of 2013, we had our license to distill. 2014, our first bourbon was released. Late 2015, I bought out my partners, moved it down to Humble, and we've been just going ever since then. 2019, I took us full time for the first time. We moved out of that facility and into a new facility right in the middle of the apocalypse. And we're still working on getting our feet back under us from the apocalypse, but things are moving in the right direction, and we feel everything's kind of coming together.
You said that the laws had changed in Texas, and you can see it coming. I imagine that's probably one of the biggest hurdles you got to jump over.
The regulatory environment is it's not particularly onerous, but it's detailed. So it takes time. Yeah, I think it took us 90 to 120 days from the initial filing with the feds to the final filing with the state to get approval from the state. But it's not, it's not like they're taking blood samples and DNA swabs and stuff like that. You don't have to give them a detailed family tree or anything, onerous. It's just, you got to make sure the signatures are in the right spot. And when they do ask for details about your layout and the description of your operating floor and all that stuff, but it's not, if you're familiar with what you're trying to do, it's not really that hard to do.
Right.
I wonder if it's harder than starting a microbrewery, or if it's about the same.
I think it's probably a little harder than starting a brewery because the timeline on a brewery is a little shorter. The time from grains to bottle for a brewery is like 30 days. A time for grain to bottle for a distillery can be 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
So, you can't start until you get your licenses completed. So everything starts at that point when the license gets approved. Then that's when the clock starts ticking. That's when you're paying rent, you're paying for the equipment, you're getting everything installed.
And you don't have any product yet for...
Exactly.
Yeah, I can't imagine making something and having to wait 2 years to sell it.
Right.
I mean, that'd be rough.
And that's why a lot of small distillers, they start with vodka or gin or sourced product. I mean, we started making ours. We didn't source our product until our orders actually exceeded our ability to make it. So then we had to source it to fill in the gap, and now we're working on building our production back up so that we can replace that gap.
Wow.
That's why a lot of them start. The problem is when you start with vodka is there's very little profit margin in vodka. There's so much vodka out there, and it's so cheap.
Yeah.
So cheap. I mean, you're getting vodka for $14, $15, and the distillers, what the price you see on the shelf is about double what the distiller gets from their distributor. So if you see $15 on the shelf, the distiller's getting $7.50, maybe a little bit more, depending on their volume. If it's like a big distiller, they're probably negotiated a little bit better price. But they got to buy the grains, the bottles, the labels, the caps, the trucks. They got to pay the people. They got to have the equipment all crammed into $7 a bottle, and that's a lot of cost that gets crammed into
That's
that.
crazy. Yeah, that's just too
And
much.
if you're talking about whiskey, $15 bottle of whiskey, and on top of that, you got to pay for the barrels and the rent for however many years it's been aging. It's a challenge.
You use oak barrels a bit.
Yeah.
Where do you source those? And I bet those are going through the roof too.
We get for our bourbons, we use 5-gallon barrels. We get those from a company out of Dallas or near Dallas called Redhead Barrels. We used to get them from a little place down in Pasadena called Deep South Barrels, but they did not make it through the pandemic.
Wow. Yeah, I bet that had to be a big deal.
Yeah, yeah.
So let me.
And when you're using smaller barrels versus larger barrels, there's like a price balance, because in the smaller barrels it takes less time to age, but there's more money in the wood. So a 5-gallon barrel is $120 versus a 50-gallon barrel that's like $250. But you have 10 times as much product in the big barrel for half the cost or twice the cost of the barrel, but you have 5.5 to 7 years in the big barrel that you're paying rent on versus 6 months in the small barrel that you're paying rent on. So there's a balance that has to be struck between time and money and all the stuff that we have to sit on. Because if we have 800 gallons of whiskey that we're sitting on, we're literally sitting on $800 or 800 gallons worth of money.
Yeah, that's
just
crazy.
Sitting there, and you can't do anything to it because you got to wait for it. You cannot speed up time. Time works. It's magic.
It's got to do. It's got to age. Well, that's like making wine. I used to make wine, homemade wine, and a lot of dewberry and fig and then whatever I could kind of source, and that was a lot of fun. But it was a lot of hurry up and wait, man.
Oh yeah.
And at the end of it, if I could get it done, re-racked once or twice in 9 months, that was quick. Normally it's a year to a year and 3 months on homemade wine,
Wow.
And there's all that anxiety of waiting, hoping it's just right. You taste it a little bit.
I tell you what, it came out a whole lot better than I ever expected. The fig especially, man, that was good stuff. And if you just slow feed it some sugar and just keep it going a little longer, I get it to about 18%. Everybody loved that, man.
I bet. And that's one of my favorite parts of this job. Like half of what I do is creation. The other half is discovery. And discovery is one of my favorite things. The absolute favorite part.
I'm sure.
Because you can, when my bourbon comes off the still, I know what I've got. I can taste it off the still, and I can taste the flavor and what it is that I'm going to get. The barrel adds to that. It doesn't change it. It doesn't magically transform it into something else. It adds to it, and brings out more flavor
It
from
enhances
it.
it.
Yeah. You're never going to turn a donkey into a racehorse, but
Right.
you can dress the donkey up, I guess.
You can race other donkeys.
Right. What goes into the barrel, if what goes into the barrel is good, what comes out of the barrel is good. Ideally, it's better, but what comes out of the barrel is 100% based on what goes into the barrel. You're not going to change it into something new. So part of what I'd get is this creation aspect where I can taste it coming off the still and I know what I've got. But a whole lot can happen in those 9 months sitting in the barrels. A whole bunch of stuff. Like an impurity can make its way in. One of the barrels could be a bad barrel. It could be a lot of stuff could happen. And you may, you don't always know what you're going to get at the other end, but it's an exciting time when you tap those barrels for the first time.
And so how do you go about determining whether it's good coming out of the barrel? I mean, is there a testing mechanism that you use, or is it just taste? Or
it's mostly taste.
Wow.
There's a specific criteria that I'm looking for. There's color, there's flavor, there's smell that I'm looking for specifically based on my prior batches that I've done.
Okay.
So I'm looking for my whiskeys to conform, within these bounds of what I'm looking for. Like my special reserve, for example. Our straight whiskey is aged 5 years in used bourbon barrels. We take a portion of that whiskey, put it back in barrels, and age it a second time to make the special reserve. It's done. There's a time aspect, but there's also a done aspect. There's a subjective aspect to determining whether or not it's done. And there's a certain color, there's a certain flavor, there's a certain taste that I'm looking for to confirm that it's done. And sometimes it's 5 weeks in the small barrel for the finishing process. Sometimes it's 8. I've never had to go longer than 12, but it takes time. And when it's ready, it's ready.
And I guess temperature and humidity and everything else is a factor.
That all has a factor in it. So when it goes in December, it takes a little bit longer. If it goes in July, it's a little bit less. Yeah.
Wow. And then there's a lot of science behind just the distilling process, I would imagine.
Yes, there is. There's the whole bioscience transformation of sugars into alcohol. There's the temperature in which the yeast works most effectively and least effectively. The type of alcohol you're going to get when the yeast is working at certain temperatures. All this stuff goes into it, and it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, it seems like it would be.
I can't explain it very well because I'm not big on the science side of it. as much as I should be. I mean, I can read it and understand it, and I understand it well enough to replicate it, but I don't really understand it well enough to explain it, except that yeast like a certain temperature, just like us. And they work better in the 70s, the high 60s, low 70s. They work better just like us. If it's too cold, they sleep. If it's too hot, they die.
Right.
Just like us.
Yeah. I can dig it.
And if we keep it at that proper temperature range, we get good alcohol. We get abundant good alcohol coming into the wash. The goal is between 15 and 20%. And at that point, we're never going to get more alcohol. Once the yeast die, we're not creating any new alcohol. Distillation doesn't create alcohol. It just separates it out from the water. And so once, we start with 15 gallons of booze, of actual pure alcohol, we end with 15 gallons of pure alcohol. We're not going to get it all out. We're not going to extract all 15 gallons. I'm lucky if I get 13 and a half or so out of the 15. 20 gallons, I'll get 18 or so. We have fairly efficient distillations, but
now I've heard a lot about water being critical also, about what your water source is, where it comes from, what type it is. What kind of water do you use?
We use recaptured rainwater.
Okay.
That is UV filtered, reverse osmosis filtered, and then reverse osmosis filtered again. Our water is literally delivered to us by the good Lord Almighty, and we turn it into whiskey.
Wow. So in a drought, you have less whiskey.
Right.
Wow.
We pray for rain.
Well, that's pretty cool. All right, so what'd you bring with you today? Let's take a look at some
All
of
right.
the stuff. And before we do that, anybody can go and purchase this where?
These are all available at Specs,
Okay.
and Total Wine, and finer liquor stores and apothecaries near you.
Okay.
If they don't carry it, ask for it by name. Tell them to call us. Our phone number's on the website. They can call us. I can put them in contact with our reps, our distribution reps.
Okay.
And that's happened on more than one occasion. That's a great way to get in the stores. Just tell them, we want this. Carry some bottles. They'll call us up, carry some bottles, and then you can get it.
Okay, awesome.
But yeah, this is in Specs in about 100 Specs across the state, 115 or so across the state of Texas, from El Paso to Beaumont and McAllen to Amarillo.
Mainly in Texas, though, right?
Yeah, we're 100% right now in Texas.
Awesome.
We haven't gotten our production up enough to feed everybody in Texas yet. So New Mexico's going to have to wait.
So
the
Texas
500,000
born and
people in
made,
New
guys.
Mexico.
Yeah, awesome.
But
right.
yeah, this is in about 50 Specs and Total Wines
Okay.
across the state. And we just released this in November. It hit the stores in March, and it's in about 30 stores, mostly in the Houston area. There's one in the Austin area. That's a Specs, Total Wine and Specs, both in the Houston area.
Okay. No, we have ice, we have cups. We also have some little solo cups that we could try it out in.
All right.
What do you suggest?
Well, if you want to start with a sample.
Yeah.
Oh, you got your cup. We'll use your cup. I'll pour you up some samples, and
All
you
right,
can get
great.
a taste, and then we can
Yeah.
give you a full pour on the rocks.
I was
Or
at
neat,
the
if you wish.
the Specs picking up those cups, and they've got all three brands at the Katy location.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
I know up here in the Porter Specs they've got it. It's one of my favorite stores to be in. They've got abundant bottles of it here at the Porter location.
All right.
So this is our straight whiskey. It is 90% corn and 10% malted barley, aged 5 years in used bourbon barrels, which is why you can see this in the camera. Probably
Yeah.
it has a much lighter color
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
than the Special Reserve, and that's because we use the used barrel. It has a much lighter char than your typical barrel. Whiskey gets all of its color and like 60% of its flavor from the barrels, which is why, all things being equal, most whiskeys taste kind of the same, because it's got about 60% of its flavor from the same barrel. American White Oak No. 3 char. That's most people in the industry use it.
This
And
is really good.
And if the whiskey
Yeah.
has the same mash bill, and it comes from the same climate zone, and it uses the same water, it's the only difference is the distiller at that point.
Really clean and silky. Not bad
Yeah.
at all, man.
Thank you. The idea was to make a whiskey that didn't taste like a corn whiskey, that was easy to drink, and you didn't have to fight your way to the bottom of the bottle.
Yeah.
What I tell people is we work on the whiskeys that you don't have to.
Right.
it's my job to work on the whiskey. It's your job just to relax and drink it.
Yeah, I like it.
Old Upple Straight. It's a winner.
Thank you.
It's good.
So then the next step on the flavor, up the flavor ladder, is our special reserve.
Hang on, we're going up the ladder, man.
That's it.
So the special reserve is when we take a portion of our straight whiskey, usually about half the batch. This last batch was about 40% of it, not quite
Okay.
half. We took and we put it back in new barrels or on fresh new wood. Use the same barrel, just add fresh oak staves to it. It gives it
Wow.
that darker color, it gives it a deeper flavor.
It has a different smell also.
Right, it gives it a little bit
Different bouquet.
a little bit more. It's a little
Yeah.
bit more refined. It's a little bit deeper flavor. It's a little bit more down the flavor line towards bourbon, but not quite heavy like a bourbon. It doesn't have that. Still doesn't have any rye in there, so it doesn't have that heavy bite that you get with your the rye whiskey.
That's oaky. No, it
Yeah.
tastes more
Yeah,
oaky
man.
to me. I
You
like
can
it,
tell
yeah.
it spent more time
Oh, yeah.
in the barrel.
And that was also the intent. Give it a little bit more refined flavor, a little bit deeper color, but not so much that it just barreled through it, so to speak. Because this actually started its life off. Our straight whiskey started its life off as a bourbon. Originally, it was our Roughneck Reserve bourbon, and it was 90% corn, new barrel, small barrels, aged 6 to 9 months. I wasn't satisfied with the flavor profile because it tasted like a corn whiskey. It tasted with too much barrel. The sweet corn wash just soaked in all that barrel flavor, and it tasted like that heavy barrel flavor. Which is why we started playing with the charring and eventually got our way to a used barrel. And as a used barrel, we can't call it bourbon because bourbon has to have a new barrel. But once we got this down, then I wanted to see what would happen if we took this and put it in a new barrel because it already had that flavor. It had some body to it. It had some.
You had a great foundation to
Yeah,
start
it
with.
had, it had a good solid
Yeah, it was
foundation. So I
awesome.
didn't think the
Yeah.
barrel would just devour the flavor, and it didn't. It just kind of layers its way in there, and I like the way it. Like I said, the creation aspect was one part, but that discovery aspect, man, that was that was something else. Imagine 6 people sitting around a table doing market research with 15 different mason jars of whiskey, each with a little charred coil in it, each of them aged a different amount of time, because we're seeing what happens when you take this, add it to oak. So we had like 15 different mason jars of whiskey. We're all sitting around a table with a little notebook, drinking samples, no talking, because you don't want to influence anybody else's opinion.
Exactly, yeah.
And you go back and try this one again. You try this one. Try. It was a great night.
Yeah, I bet it
Work.
That's a hard job, man. I feel bad
Someone's
for
got to
you.
do it.
Yeah, we had a whiskey tasting show, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But it was purely flavored whiskeys, which is pretty gimmicky. I see you don't have any flavored whiskeys.
We don't do flavored whiskeys.
Any plan to jump into that game? I mean, all the big guys are in it, too.
Infinity is a long time, so I won't rule it out for Infinity. But I have no immediate plans because you can take whiskey, you can take a mason jar, and you can make a flavored whiskey out of whatever you want.
Yeah.
And we're happy to sell you the parts. Go to the store and get yourself some fruit and make a whiskey. And then, you don't have to rely on my flavor palette. You can make a apple blackberry or cranberry juleps or whatever you want to do. Go crazy with it. Experiment like madmen in a science lab. Do it. It's fun.
So the difference between whiskey and bourbon, you had mentioned it, is new barrel, right?
There's a couple of other criteria. Bourbon is a specific type of whiskey.
Okay.
So all the stuff that goes into a whiskey has to go into a bourbon. Cereal grain, fermented, distilled up to 160, barreled at no greater than 125, bottled at no less than 80 proof.
Okay.
Those are the wide strokes of making whiskey. Bourbon has to be at least 50% corn, has to be made in the United States, has to be aged in a new charred oak barrel, and can't have any flavorings or additives or anything like that.
We talked about that on our show.
Yeah.
Don't you remember?
the show? Yeah, I don't remember it at the end.
I think it was a few weeks back when y'all did the tasting episode. If I
about a
recall.
year ago.
No, it was a while back.
I'm still buzzing.
Yeah,
But you can have whiskey, bourbon whiskey flavored with, but you can't have flavored bourbon whiskey, because once you add the flavor, it's no longer bourbon.
Bourbon,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
Now, what's the
and
difference?
that's a technical description, a technical labeling designation. There's companies that get away with it because the TTB doesn't do it very closely.
Right.
But the technical terminology is bourbon whiskey flavored with, not blackberry bourbon, because you technically can't have
Right.
blackberry. Once you add the blackberry, it's no longer bourbon.
No longer bourbon.
Technically speaking, but
Okay.
you know.
And now, what
It's
about
a terminology
Scotch?
sloppiness.
How does Scotch slide its way in there?
Scotch is another specific type of whiskey,
Okay.
but it's made in Scotland, and they have their own rules. I can't make Scotch.
So there's no
I-
American Scotch.
No American Scotch, but you can make a single malt
damn.
whiskey.
Huh.
Yeah, I can make a single malt whiskey in the United States. I just cannot call it Scotch.
Right.
If I call it Scotch, there's going to be some bekilted lawyers coming to my door.
that
I'm going to
is
have
the-
to listen to somebody play a
You know you're in
bagpipe.
trouble when a bunch of lawyers show up and kill
I'm
you.
not
Have you-
going to
have you
understand
ever
a
heard
damn
anybody
thing they
play
say,
a
but they're...
bagpipe?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Oh my God! I was at a funeral.
In the room.
Oh yeah, I was at a funeral, and this guy was maybe 10 feet from me. And I was watching him, and I was like, "This is going to be interesting." Painful. That thing was so loud, it freaked me out. man.
Bagpipes?
Oh yeah, it
I
hurt.
love bagpipes.
That sounded good and all that, but I mean, it was eardrum popping,
Yeah,
painful.
piercing,
I
I
was like,
bet.
Yeah, I was like, turn that shit down. You know, it's, damn, I couldn't believe how loud it was. But it was in a room at a funeral. You know, everything's kind of somber, and all of a sudden he starts rocking out with this thing. I was like, damn, I mean, it was really loud.
All cats in the neighborhood showed
Yeah,
up.
next time I see a bagpipe, I'm going to the other side of the room. I'm not going to.
You don't want to be too close.
Oh yeah, it was rough.
I mean, I pick on bagpipes a lot, but
Man.
but I do. I thoroughly enjoy listening to them, just at a appropriate distance and volume.
All right, so you recently started hosting talent at your distillery. So let's talk about that a little bit. I'd like to find out what spurred you on to go in that direction and how it's working out.
Well, I've always wanted to have events at the distillery. We just moved into this new space back in 2020. Right at the end of 2019, we closed up our old shop when we took the distillery full time. Moved into the new shop in March or May of 2020. It was supposed to have been March, but instead we decided to have a pandemic.
An apocalypse.
An apocalypse, a full-on apocalypse. And we didn't have our electricity turned on until October, again, because of the apocalypse.
Wow.
Like everything slowed down. And then the freeze came in February of 2021,
Oh my God, I remember
which
that.
doubled the price of all the build-out stuff that we were going to do. So we still don't have our tasting room in my
Damn,
office
it's
and all that.
just been a bad couple of years,
Yeah,
hasn't it?
it's been a series of unfortunate events. So we don't have all the build out inside done, but we were coming to the tail end of all the social distancing stuff. The viral loads were coming down. Things were statistically returning to normal-ish.
Right.
So I finally just said, screw it. We're just going to have an audience outside in the parking lot. If we can't do it inside, we'll do it outside. The weather was beautiful. So we just, instead of waiting to do it inside, we just did it outside. Put up some barrels in the parking lot. We had the YouTube channel that we did. Go check us out on YouTube, Old Humble Distilling Company. We had the YouTube channel. We had some artists who came through during the pandemic. They didn't physically come in, but they played remotely on our show.
Okay.
So I had some long-standing relationships. We've been doing this since 2013. I've known a lot of artists around town, both music performers, burlesque performers, comedy performers, like all of them. All of the different aspects. And I finally, let's just start doing it. Let's just bring them in. I'll turn on the camera, plug in the computer, and we'll just start streaming the stuff on YouTube. We'll have a crowd here. We'll have a crowd there. They'll be able to play to, several multiples of the number of people they can actually see.
So every Friday night, right?
Every Friday night. We started off
Cool.
charging $5 a ticket so that there would be some kind of connection to the ticket. You say you can say I'm coming, and that's free.
Yeah.
But if you say I'm coming, here's $5, you're definitely coming.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like an onerous amount. But then I finally just said, you know what, screw it, just show up. Just come. It doesn't. You don't have to go through the whole process of setting up your account in Eventbrite and doing the payments and all that. So just come.
2 drink minimum.
Yeah,
Come on.
it doesn't matter. And most people
Yeah,
they
you gotta
come.
at least cover, have a cover charge or something.
And most people come, they get a cocktail that pays for the. If you come, you buy a cocktail, it pays for the artist, and everything after that is fine.
Right.
Great.
I mean, obviously, we don't want to do it we don't want to lose money every week. We're a business.
Yeah.
But the goal is to, show off the artist, make a little bit of money, and feed people whiskey.
Yeah.
There you go.
I
That's
watched
it.
a couple of those. It looked like a lot of fun.
It is. It's a lot of fun there, and some performers Some performers, they're better than others. They come for 3 hours. There's a few that, they turn on the guitar and they just start playing, and they go from 7 and they go until 10 o'clock and they don't stop. You kind of have
3 hours is a pretty good set.
Yeah, you have to unplug them and
Yeah,
send them away. It's like, guys, stop. That's it. But then there's others you got to remind them, like, get off your break, get over here.
So, and have you had whole bands or just individual musicians?
We haven't done full bands yet.
Okay.
We're not quite set up. I haven't felt comfortable pulling a full band in.
Okay.
But come the fall, when we do our big release party for our Ghost Town Bourbon, our Boomtown Bourbon, and then our 72-hour Blackout Bourbon, we will have, we're going to have some big events.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And how far ahead are you booking right now? Like, can somebody go to your website and find out who's going to be playing next Friday? And
we are booked through the end of June, and then
Okay.
we're going to go on basically a summer hiatus because playing
Too hot.
gigs outside in
Yeah.
July, even at night, it's just.
It's-
We had a preview of it on Friday,
Yeah.
of like the air on Friday, this last Friday the 3rd. It was still sweet, that sweet summer air, because it was high 70s, low 80s.
yeah.
It was a little bit humid, but it wasn't that bad. There was a little bit of a breeze, but not much of one. But you could feel the heat kind of coming in, and it wasn't quite. Yeah,
Here it comes, man.
it was like there, and
Oh,
it was like watching, and you could feel it, like.
Yeah.
But it was still just cool enough that the air was still sweet, so it wasn't hot yet. But I fully expect that first week
Yeah,
in
we're
July is
just-
going to be just uncomfortable.
We're just
Oh, yeah.
getting started. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm hoping we get 2 more good weekends in June. Our last week in June is going to be a big party. We got the Humble Whiskey Club coming in, performers coming in with the Humble Whiskey Club, and some other folks. The events are on our Facebook page through the end of June, and when fall rolls around and we start booking people in September, we'll start listing them out on our website as well, so you can come check it out.
Okay. All right. So what's next on the tasting?
So this
list?
is our Double Oak Rye, the newest release, and the farthest departure from the other 2 that I could possibly get. These are both 90% corn. This one is 95% rye.
95%
And if
rye.
you're at all familiar with 95% ryes, you can go ahead and forget that now, because this tastes nothing like those. This is 95% rye, aged 2.5 years.
It's got a great smell.
Thank you.
Yeah.
With extra oak staves in the barrel, so it doesn't taste like a 95% rye aged 2.5 years. It's more like a rye that's been aged 7 or 8.
Let's hope this is better than the other rye I've tasted.
I can almost guarantee it. It's got a darker color than your typical high rye 2.5 year rye whiskeys because of those extra oak staves.
Did you try it?
Not yet.
Try it out.
It's got a good nose.
I think
Cheers.
you'll be surprised. Yeah. I like
The whole room
after.
goes silent waiting
I
for
like,
the
I
reaction.
like I like the after. The after's good, man. It has a good finish.
I'm not a rye guy, but that's a whole lot better than the other ryes I've had. I'll
take that.
I
I'll
mean,
take it. Absolutely.
I got to be honest.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Now, again, picture the market research. Me, 4 other people, my brother's kitchen. We all bring an armful of bottles into the
Let me get
kitchen.
on ice cream.
I bring a bottle of rye that I had worked on in my own shop, plus a couple of others that I had gone out and shopped for as taste comparisons. I have a Woodford, I have a Redemption, Templeton, there's an Eagle Rye, Bullet Rye, and like 4 others, Coletto Creek, and we all have just all the bottles. Countertop just full of bottles, and we're like pouring little bits and giving it to each other and tasting them. There was 1 bottle of rye I got every single time I got a sample from that particular bottle. I knew it. I could taste it, and I did not like it at all. I do not want to make anything that tastes like that. I'm not going to say what it is, but we've all had it. We've all had that rye. We all know what. You may not know what brand I'm talking about, but you've tasted it. You know the feeling when you drink it and it tastes like medicine and sends a shiver up your spine. But then there were the others that I really liked, specifically Woodford. I'll shout them out. Woodford's rye was 7 or 8 years, deep, heavy, charred flavor, balanced out the high rye flavor with the barrel. And that was what gave me the inspiration to do the extra oak stave so that we have the extra oak to balance out the extra rye, because I really like the heavy rye flavor, I just didn't like the heavy reaction when it wasn't balanced out very well.
Mm-hmm. It is heavy, and it's got a sting to it. It's got a bite.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah,
it's,
it does have
as
a
it
bite.
will.
it's not bad, but here's a stupid question. Rye drinkers, I like whiskey and Coke.
Mm-hmm.
Do they mix Coke with that, or is there
You
a
can.
certain drink, or
I'm not gonna.
are there any rules that I don't
The
know
only
about?
rule that you are required to follow when drinking whiskey, the only way to do it right, if you do it any other way, it's wrong, is you take the open end of the cup and you pour it in your mouth. If you pour it in any other open hole, you've done it wrong.
Opening mouth.
Yeah.
Only
in,
mouth.
In here. You don't, no ears, no eyes, no nose, no other open holes, mouth only.
I think I can keep up with that.
You can put it in Coke, you can put it in ginger ale, you can put it in wine, you can put it in whatever you want to do.
I'm gonna make a root beer
Just
float
in
out
your
of that
mouth.
rye.
That's it. Fair enough. Do it. As long as it tastes good. If you do it and it doesn't taste good, you've also done it wrong. But at least you learned.
Yeah, there you go.
Not bad at all.
All right, so who you got coming in this coming Friday?
This coming Friday, I would have to. Patrick, you put me on the damn spot.
I'm
I don't know.
That's
I don't know.
I'm sure you got a lot of hats
but
to wear down there.
We'll play.
I just saw the ad come through. It is these guys. I just saw it. I'm on airplane mode. I can't tell you. I'll have to tell you later.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Well, that's cool.
I can't remember. I have to ask my booking agents to make
All
sure
right.
that they know. Yeah,
Fantastic.
just made that up. I don't have a booking agent.
Well, you should get one. Everybody needs a booking.
Everybody needs a booking agent.
There you go.
I don't. But it's a free show. It's gonna be a big show. It's gonna be a fun show.
Okay.
That much I know because I don't book anybody whose music I haven't listened to at least once and thoroughly enjoyed. And if I'm not mistaken, the guys this weekend contacted me back in late April, sent me like 3 videos, just cold sent them to me. Here's 3 videos of them singing in their living room. And then the 4th message to me was, hey, we want to play at your distillery. I'm like, well, how? Yeah, come on, man. Bring it. Let's go.
Great.
That's how they got booked.
Well, I've got a couple of ideas. Local guys that have been on the show. I'll
we've
send them
got
your way,
some-
and you can
we've
do
got
what you
some
want
good
with them.
talent.
I'm easy.
Yeah.
I'm easy, and I pay my performers. So, tell them to
great.
send me a message. I'll put them on.
Okay, so you've got 3 main types of whiskey that you're distilling presently.
Yeah,
Selling in Texas.
right.
So what do you see for Old Humble Distilling in the next couple of years?
Well, I in the immediate future, I made reference to it earlier. Our Ghost Town Bourbon, Boomtown Bourbon, and 72-hour Blackout Bourbons. Those will all be coming out between October of this year and March of next year.
And you'll be doubling your variety of product.
Right. And so our Boomtown Bourbon is the first bourbon we ever made, the first bourbon we ever released. This will be our 4th batch of Boomtown Bourbon that we're releasing in December or January of this year. December of this year, January of next year. That's a traditional tri-grain Kentucky style Texas bourbon whiskey. It's high on the corn content, low on the rye content. So it's nice and smooth, nice and buttery, nice, easy to drink. It's the reason we have a distillery.
Okay.
Our Ghost Town Bourbon is that same bourbon that has only touched the inside of the barrel long enough to be called a bourbon. So that'll be coming out in October-ish. Mm-hmm. That'll be the first release. It'll be October, and with that bottle of white whiskey, or white bourbon, you'll be able to buy a little charred coil of oak that you can drop in the barrel or in the bottle and age it on your countertop over the course of 7 days.
Oh, I love that
So if you don't
idea.
want to wait
That's
until January,
awesome, yeah.
If you don't want to wait until January, you can get the Ghost Town Bourbon.
Yeah.
And the Ghost Town and Boomtown Bourbon together, they complement each other.
Cool.
And then the next one in March of next year, or February or March of next year, right at the 2-year anniversary of the 72-hour blackout from 2021, that was the 500 bottles of bourbon made with, I told you we collect rainwater. Mm-hmm. So the water we collect specifically for that bourbon was water from the freeze in February of 2021. It's
cool.
sitting in a tote, 500 gallons, sitting in 2 totes in a storage unit, waiting to be used for this batch of bourbon. It was supposed to be made this year, or rather, it was supposed to be released in February this year, but we had some equipment that didn't quite get set up yet. So as soon as that equipment gets done setting up, we get that produced and sent out the door.
Okay.
Do you
And
have
the first 500 bottles will be made with that water. After that, it'll just be regular water that we use for all our other bourbons. But our 72-hour blackout bourbon, limited edition bottles, February next year.
Wow.
Can
I want
people
one of those.
can people go and check out your operation, like take a tour?
Oh, yeah. So Fridays, we open our doors at 6. The music starts at 7. And we'll usually do 2 tours that night while the music's going. Do one before the music starts and one while the music's playing.
Cool. I went to the Jack Daniels in, was it Chattanooga? No, that is
Lynchburg.
Lynchburg. Yeah,
Mhm.
we went through Chattanooga to get there. That was fun.
I bet.
Man, they opened those big old vats up and made that waft onto you, and I got a buzz just smelling
Yeah,
that, man.
yeah, it's a treat. Going to those big industrial guys, seeing how the operation is done at scale. I'm like a kid in a candy store every time I get to go see
Yeah,
one.
I bet you've been there. Yeah.
I haven't been to the Jack Daniels one, but I've been to some big ones. Yeah.
Go check it out.
The first time we drove past the Jim Beam, I didn't go do the Jim Beam tour, but the first time we drove past it, it was just you're driving through down this like back road in Kentucky, and you see a sign, Jim Beam Distillery, next right, and you come into the next right, and you go into the parking lot, and it just like lays out. There's this green field and this huge. I mean, it looks like a refinery that has been plucked out of Pasadena and dropped in a giant green field in Kentucky. It is surreal. And then as you keep going down, there's a rack house and another rack house, and another rack house. It's
Yeah,
these
they're huge.
huge old tobacco barns just full of barrels. It is a surreal sight.
Awesome. Yeah. I'll have to get out there and check that
Yeah.
out one.
We ought to do that. We can go write it off our taxes because that's research.
Sounds good.
Exactly.
I like
But
it.
just the scale of this thing, you think of Mila Kunis walking among the barrels on the Jim Beam commercials, and it's not that at all.
Yeah.
It's just this huge. I mean, it looks like a refinery, a huge oil refinery. It's
Wow.
amazing because it's basically the same technology, but it's just stunning. I was not the first time I saw it. I was not prepared for that scale. I should have been, but I was not. So
Yeah, I don't think I'd be either. I didn't think it was that big.
yeah,
I guess
it is immense, immense.
Be. Wow. Okay. All right. So YouTube, you're doing a whole lot of stuff, and it's Old Humble Distillery. On
Old
YouTube.
Humble Distilling Company. Yeah.
Okay.
We're on all the
Distillery
social media, so if y'all want to find us, we're everywhere. We're on the Twitters and TikToks and
Company. Great.
Facebooks and Instagrams. We're
How
all
many,
over the place.
videos are out there now? on your
For
channel?
our YouTube channel, north of 200.
Okay.
So during the pandemic, we started the channel probably back in 2013 or somewhere in that neighborhood, but I posted just about nothing. I'm pretty sure I posted nothing at all until December 2019. And it was this ad that I got advertising our straight whiskey and special reserve so that I could do YouTube ads, targeted YouTube ads.
Okay.
And then the apocalypse happens. And in order to keep myself busy and kind of start spreading the word about the whiskey a little bit more effectively, we start doing live happy hour, like little cocktail corner happy hour shows. And then a bunch of my artist friends who lost their stages started doing this thing called Cabin Fever and asked me if I could do my show for their Cabin Fever network, basically 4 hours of content a night that they were doing. And I said, yeah, I'll take Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we started doing our happy hours. It went from a 15-minute cocktail corner to a 1 hour cocktail corner and happy hour show.
Okay.
The Old Humble, what did I call it? The Old Humble Pandemic Quarantine Cocktail Corner and Happy Hour. It's a mouthful of
That is.
words.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Not SEO optimized at all. So we started doing that, and we did probably 100 episodes of that. So we went from March to, I think we went to June 2021 is when we had our 100th episode. So we went twice a week for most of the while. I did a short hiatus, and then we came back for once a week, and it went all the way to June until we finally did our 100th episode. But we had performers, we had guests of all kinds coming in there, science topics, singers, songwriters, burlesque performers, dancers, sideshow, just all these people. They didn't have a stage, so we had a show for him, and like, come on,
Sure.
let's do this thing. And we talked whiskey, and we talked sideshow, and we talked burlesque, and we talked dance, and we talked. We had some really fascinating, really fun discussions. I had a couple of actresses. One actress that was in this movie called Velocipaster, which is a delightfully bad movie. It is so much fun to watch, and. You can find it on Amazon. It's great. Velocipaster is so much.
Could you hand me that bottle of straight?
Absolutely.
I just want to take a look at that again.
The whole thesis of the whole plot of the movie is there's a pastor who gets cursed and he turns into a velociraptor when he gets angry. It's wonderful. And he uses his newfound power to, fight bad guys. And
Cool. I'll have to check that out.
There's a ring of Jesuit priests.
I'm done looking at it.
No. There's a ring of Jesuit ninjas who are spreading cocaine to get people addicted so that they'll go into rehab to keep their churches relevant.
Age-old story.
And it's this completely convoluted. And they don't even reveal this until like the second half of the movie. And it's like, what? I'm loving it. This is
Who
fantastic.
wrote that?
So go watch the movie. Trust me, knowing that does not ruin the movie. It only makes it better. But I had her come on the show and talk about the movie and projects and all the stuff and how everything had changed during the pandemic. We had a good time. It was a great show. And then
it sounds like it.
And then we do our 100th episode, and we kind of mothball it for a couple of months while I go do stuff and travel and relax. And then I got the itch again, and we came back, and I kind of retooled the show. We did it some more. And now we got to the point this year, a few months back, where I was planning on bringing in the bands on the Fridays, and I wanted those bands to be streamed on the show, and I wanted them to get the exposure. So then I started doing all the analytic stuff and actually learning how to build a proper YouTube channel.
Yeah, it can be tough. There's a lot to it.
Yeah, so we basically did a year and a half worth of shows that were for me, and now we're doing shows that are for people watching. We're doing much better shows now.
Right. Yeah, start taking your audience into consideration.
Yeah. If they go to the channel, it's gonna be hard to find the stuff from 2020. But if they can find it, good. Do they need to let me know if they can find it? Because I need to get rid of that stuff. I need to scrub harder.
All right. Well, what's the physical address of your location?
Physical address of location, 19103 Continental Parkway.
Continental Parkway.
Yeah.
And that's off 1960.
It's off 1960.
Okay.
Between 1960 and Atascocita Road, east of Highway 59.
Okay.
So towards Lake Houston.
Yeah. All right.
But
great.
if you hit Lake Houston, you've gone too far.
Right.
Yeah,
And
you need to turn around.
Yeah.
Come way back.
And you missed the bridge because you shouldn't hit Lake Houston. There's a bridge.
Yeah.
McKay Bridge.
Yeah, you should go on the bridge. Don't hit the water.
That's it. All right. Well, we look forward to the new products coming out, and appreciate you coming out. And it's good stuff.
Thank you.
It's all good
Thank you.
stuff.
Now, the stuff that I didn't tell you about yet.
Okay. Now we're talking.
The rest of the menu. See, this is the cool thing about having a tasting room and having the facility that we have and being able to do this full time. Like the bourbons will be our mainline production. Our straight whiskeys and our rye will be mainline production. All that stuff will be intended to go into stores. Mm-hmm. The stuff that we'll be making that won't go into stores is stuff that we'll be able to do because I'm doing it full time, because we have the facility, fully operational. I can make batches that are only like 5 cases or 10 cases. I can do that. Jack Daniels can't do that.
Yeah.
Jim Beam can't do that. They have a giant refinery-sized distillery. They can't make just
Right.
5 cases of something unless it's like something that distiller's going to bring home for himself. In fact, they probably don't even have equipment small enough to do that. But I can make a batch of peach brandy. I can make a batch of coffee liqueur. I can make a batch of rice whiskeys. Traditional style Japanese rice whiskey. I can do that. I'm sure Jim Beam can do that because they got bought by Suntory and they are not an American company. But I like to stress that. They're fine. They're a great company. They make good, delicious bourbon if you like that sort of thing. But they're a Japanese company. Don't ever forget that. Don't forget that.
Okay.
We had this thing about Seagram's.
Yeah, they're Canadian.
Yes,
yeah,
they are. Seagram's is Canadian. It's Canadian whiskey. Are they owned by a Canadian company? Or
They're
a
owned
French
by
company?
IBM and Xerox, and I mean, come on,
Really?
everybody's got a piece of Seagram's. The Mounties.
Damn the Canadians.
But yeah, we can make the rice whiskey. We can use Texas rice, koju, the koju, the fungus that converts the starches in the rice to the sugars that can be fermented, and yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to do. I'm playing around with the idea of doing a single malt whiskey, using smoked barbecue wood to smoke the grains, and a companion to our double oak rye. I want to do a pecan oak rye, where instead of using extra charred oak to finish the aging process, we use extra charred pecan to finish the aging process. Gives it an entirely different flavor, entirely different smell, complete different interaction with the drink when you drink it.
Has anybody done that before with pecan wood?
I've seen people doing it with pecans, actual toasted pecans, but not the wood.
Interesting.
So and toasted pecan whiskeys are delicious. They have the sugars from the pecan that gets caramelized and goes into the wood, the flavor, and it just gives it that nice toasty, nutty flavor to it. But actually using the wood, the way that the wood interacts with the whiskey, in the same way that the oak interacts with the whiskey, the charred pecan wood just has its own unique flavor profile that's different from the actual nut.
Right, whole different animal.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Looking forward to that.
That's gonna be fun.
If any of this stuff doesn't quite work out for you, where you want to put your name on it, I'll throw that away for you, man.
There you go. And so all this will be available in your tasting room.
That'll be available in the tasting room. Yeah, all that stuff. And
Wow.
the pecan oak, hopefully, it'll escape from the tasting room and get into stores.
Awesome.
But we'll see. I can't make a promise on that.
And when will your tasting room be open?
Yeah. So the weather's been hot, hasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it has.
We're working on it. I don't know for sure. Hopefully we'll get the tasting room open by this time next year.
Okay.
After the freeze, after the completely unnecessary freeze and blackout that we had, it was all the cost of build outs went up. Everything doubled. I had a whole lot of quotes,
Right.
but
They didn't matter anymore.
Suddenly those guys got busy and the cost all doubled. So we got to wait.
You're on the same schedule as a new studio, I think.
Yeah, we got to wait.
So,
Did you lose product during that?
I didn't lose any product.
Wow, that's saying something.
I didn't lose any product. The distillery itself is very well insulated, so I didn't lose anything inside the shop. I couldn't get to the shop.
Right.
We were frozen in our neighborhood. I couldn't get out of my neighborhood, but I couldn't get to the shop. But once I did get to the shop, we get in. It was probably 32 degrees outside still by the time we got to the shop. We got into the shop. It was a nice toasty, like 50-something degrees inside. It felt great.
Oh wow.
Wow.
And we had electricity, so I don't think the distillery lost electricity the whole time.
Next time I'm camping out at your shop.
I know. If I could have gotten there, we had a heater and a little tent. If we could have gotten to the distillery, we probably could have been more comfortable in the distillery because it had electricity.
yeah. That's great.
We just didn't have internet or anything good. Just had to
Lesson
sit there
learned.
in the
You
with the
had
lights
that?
on.
Yeah,
And
that's all you
we
need.
had whiskey lights and just stare at each other with the lights on.
There you go.
To listen to my kids' stories.
Yeah.
But they'd be boring because they didn't have Fortnite, so they wouldn't be making new Fortnite stories. Just the same old Fortnite stories, again and again.
Oh, the humanity.
Almost depressing. All right. So anything on the horizon other than what you've said so far?
Well, we got the last 3 shows of June.
Okay.
So at the end of June, we're going to start our road shows of going back into the stores and doing tastings in the stores. So you'll very likely see me at a Specs or Total Wine. I usually publish those tasting schedules on Facebook and on Twitter. So if you're wondering where you can find a taste, that's usually where you can get the heads up. But all of these are in the $30 price range, so it's not even really price prohibitive. You get a bottle for $30, $35. Get a bottle, get a couple of friends together. If you don't like it, make them drink it.
Perfect.
I mean, that's fine. Just lie to them and say, "Oh, this is the best stuff I've ever had." Give it to them. Let them take it and drink it and go home. They're not going to tell you it's terrible if you tell them it's great.
I would think the tastings though are pretty successful, huh? They probably work out.
Yeah,
pretty well.
and it's the best way that it's the best way I have of connecting with a large group of people. because we get people to the distillery who are obviously coming to the distillery for a reason. They're not coming to the distillery for bread and popsicles. They're coming for the whiskey. They're coming for us.
Yeah.
But at a Specs or a Total Wine, there's a lot more just general foot traffic. So at a typical Specs, even on a Tuesday or a Wednesday when it's not very busy, I'll see 50 people, or 50 to 100 people, especially on a Saturday. It can be anywhere between 100 to 200 people on a Saturday. And I'll give my sales pitch 100 times. This is our straight whiskey made from 90% corn, 10% malted barley, aged 5 years in used bourbon barrels, and delightful to drink. And then just go through the whole spiel. By the time I'm done, the employees at Specs or Total Wine know everything about this whiskey because they've heard me say it 50 times the exact same way.
And that matters a lot too.
So the tastings are a great way to interact with people who've never even met us before. And that was one of the challenges during the pandemic was we weren't allowed to go into Specs and do tastings. So my primary marketing, Specs was open, but my primary marketing avenue of going to the stores and handing people a sample of my drink, that was completely cut off for 6 months. And then for even a couple months after that was relaxed, people were very reluctant to reach out and grab something from my filthy hands. And that makes sense. It's perfectly fine. They had rules about, laying them out on the table. They could come, they'd have to pick it up themselves. We accommodated it. We got used to it. But now it's so much easier now.
Yeah. I read a review, and the person was saying, and I couldn't believe the owner of the company was right there, and he autographed our bottles.
That's what we do. Every time you buy a bottle from me, you get it signed by the guy that makes the whiskey.
Well, that's cool.
Absolutely.
Impressive.
Well, we'll have to do that after the camera stop rolling.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, sounds good.
I got something I can hook y'all up with.
All right, Mark, you got anything else?
Just support your local distillery, Old Humble Distilling Company, right here in Humble, Texas, and good stuff. I can vouch for that. I've got a little bit to finish out before we leave today.
Excellent, and I'd reiterate that. I mean, it's all your local businesses are what keeps local industries and local economies thriving. Go and buy the Etsy stuff from your neighbors. Go to your the cupcake shop that's owned by your neighbor down the street. Support these local guys. I mean, we're putting kids through college just like you.
Sure, exactly.
Walmart's great to get cheap stuff, but if you want good stuff, go seek out some local folks. We will take good care of you.
Your neighbors that took a risk and they've started a small business that's hopefully going to get to a bigger business, and they're the people that need our help.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Support them.
And it's good whiskey too. So I've tried all three.
There's that too.
That makes it
easy.
And Mark even put his stamp of approval on the rye.
Yeah. That root beer float's coming. I'll keep you updated.
My wife loves it in hot cocoa.
Oh,
there's an idea.
Or coffee.
It makes a great morning coffee.
Or ice cream.
Or afternoon coffee.
We just found out who the brains of the operation is.
Make a shake with that? That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. The straight whiskey drizzled over a little bit of ice cream with some caramel.
Like an amaretto thing.
Amaretto. Oh my God, yes. This with some hot cocoa or coffee, or hot cocoa and coffee. A little mocha action. Our special reserve makes a fantastic whiskey sour. An absolutely fantastic whiskey sour.
And if you're into making glaze for ribs, mix a little of that in the glaze.
That's right. We used our special reserve in a barbecue. A barbecue sauce added we just took regular off the shelf barbecue sauce, added some mustard, added some special reserve, let it cook in a crock pot for a little while. Oh, so good. So good.
Great idea.
Absolutely good. And just a classic old fashioned with our rye. I said, half joking earlier, you can put our straight whiskey in a glass of champagne. It makes a much better mimosa.
Oh, I bet.
than putting orange juice
with orange juice.
Yeah, exactly. And you can hang out at the brunch just like everybody else, but you're drinking a real drink.
We need to make a recipe book with all this stuff, and that's going to take a lot of research.
Yeah,
but we can get through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we can.
We're going into the summer months now. A little ginger ale and some lemon.
There you go.
Lemon's a little bit sweeter than lime. Ginger ale and lemon with our straight whiskey makes just a floaty in a kiddie pool.
Throw a little mint on there or some other leaves you got laying around.
Lemonade and mint makes our world famous Colonel Angus cocktail with our straight whiskey.
Colonel Angus?
Colonel Angus. Yeah, he's a hero from...
Angus Young, ACDC.
There you go.
It was a war hero from the Revolutionary War, the Battle of Beaver Creek.
Oh.
Yeah,
Angus Young fought at Beaver Creek?
No, not
Yeah,
Angus
well,
Young. Colonel Angus.
he's pretty old, man.
Colonel Anus Angus.
Anus Angus. Yeah. You always recognize him when he's leaving.
Comes up the path, darting through the cotton.
Well, this show is taking a turn south.
I like it. All right.
I encourage everyone to look up that skit from Saturday Night Live, the Colonel Angus skit. It's hilarious.
I'm going to have to see that one.
Absolutely hilarious. But we do that with this one. We also do an apple blossom cocktail, which is just apple juice and cinnamon. Our special reserve with Coke and cinnamon. Experiment with your cocktails.
Yeah.
Whiskey should be fun. Don't ever let anybody tell you how you're supposed to drink whiskey, unless they're telling you to pour it in something other than your mouth.
Yeah.
That's it. Don't let those people anywhere near your
Sounds
bottle.
good. All right. And so, guys, he's also working on his YouTube channel, so make sure and visit it. Now, I went and I checked it out, and I watched about an hour of him just bottling whiskey. And it was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So I was surprised. I was like, I've been doing this about an hour. It's crazy.
Our day in the life live streams are some of the most popular things that we do. Where I'm just bottling whiskey and talking about whatever's in chat, whatever's on my mind, just like you do in the office with normal people.
There you go. And if you actually want to do some reality time, go to the distilling company, check it out, listen to the music, partake in some of these good cocktails.
Every Friday night.
And
Friday night.
every Friday night. Don't show up once. Show up every Friday night.
Every Friday night.
At least through the end of June.
Mm-hmm. And I'll also add, at the end of June, we're going to do our 600 subscriber and 4th of July spectacular.
Ah, okay.
Which
You're
will
blowing up 600 something or other. Right?
Yeah, which should be coming by the end of this month. We will be launching off 600 rockets to celebrate our 600 subscribers and the 4th of July. My favorite holiday.
How come we never do anything fun like that?
I don't know, man. I guess I don't know.
It is specifically over the objections of my lawyer.
No, I think you should do it. Now, and this is going to be at the distilling company?
It'll be, well, we're on an abandoned road, basically.
That's awesome.
So there's nothing around us except
Yeah.
trees and dry brush. So
Hopefully
we'll
we
see
get
what happens. It'll be pretty cool.
Hopefully we'll get a little rain before then and everything will be fine.
Everybody run out there with a bottle of whiskey and put the fire out.
In Lisa's words, and my wife's, and pretty much everybody else I've told this is a really bad idea.
I think it's a great idea.
I know. That's what I say. Like, that does not tell me not to do it. That just encourages me.
That is encouragement for sure.
Just invite the fire department to hang out. That's all you got to do.
They'll come.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
One way or another, they'll get there.
Yeah, they're going to be there regardless.
Like, you dial 9 and 1. I'm going to light the wick. We'll see what happens.
Sounds great. Well, Joe, it was great having you on, man.
Well, thanks for having me. I've had fun.
Yeah.
Thanks
and
for
I love
coming
talking
out,
about
man.
this stuff. I love doing what I do. I mean, I used to work at a bank. I work here now, and I wouldn't change it.
Bank?
I wouldn't change it for $1 million.
Man, I'm glad
well, maybe
you're
$1
all
million
right.
bucks. I wouldn't change it for a lot. Let's put it that way.
You might be on your way to $1 million bucks, and that's a good-looking label, by the way. Who did your artwork?
I did.
Really?
Yeah, I literally drew this out on a napkin, and fiddled around with some clip art, trying to find the stuff that I wanted to do, and then passed it off to a graphic artist to have him make it look like I didn't draw it on a napkin.
That's awesome.
And he polished it up for me, put it in the dimensions that I needed and dimensions I wanted to get on the bottle. We've gone through a few iterations since, but it hasn't. The only things that have changed are the size of the logo and the color of the label.
I like the label. It's good looking, man. It looks
Good
professional.
job. I
So
like
what
the
made
hat,
you
too.
decide on the square bottle?
There were no other square bottles like it on the shelf.
Really?
That was it.
Smart.
I wanted the bottle to look like it was a decanter and to look classy enough where you could have it on your kitchen table and not, just to be a nice, sturdy, unique looking bottle that looked nice and classy and clean. You could have it there on the table.
Bullseye.
That was the goal. Thank you.
Yeah, bullseye for sure. All right, Joe. appreciate you coming to see us and bringing some whiskey with you. And I'm going to grab a couple of bottles. I think Mark might grab one or two also.
My absolute pleasure.
Definitely.
And we look forward to seeing you Friday. We're probably going to come out and check it out.
Cheers.
Thank you.
All right.
You got something in there. You can cheers.
Yeah, we can do
You
it.
can tab it. No toasting with an empty glass.
That goes in your mouth.
Yeah.
You were listening, right?
Yeah, you can't pour it on top of your head. It
No
doesn't work the
ears.
same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably try, though. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. For Mark Hogan, I'm Hank Vatt. This is Hank's Think Tank, and we're going to sit here and drink some more of this stuff, but I don't want to do it on can. We'll see you guys later. All right, bye-bye.